Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar book review. This is going to be the review for I Am Zuko. So this is basically the first new Avatar book release of the year. Yes, it is not a hugely significant book in terms of like new content. It's not a comic, it's not a novel, it's just sort of a smaller picture book style thing, but it's still, I think, worth checking out, if not just because of the art. So you might be wondering, what is this book? What's going on here? What is this? This is the second I Am Avatar Little Golden Book. That's what it says up here in the corner, Little Golden Book. That's what the whole gold spine is about. And it's a style of book for kind of young readers mainly. It's the second Avatar I Am book after I Am Aang, which came out like 6 months ago or so. So basically what these books are, they're just 20-page young reader picture books. In this case, it is basically the recap of each character's story in ATLA, told through new art and, some text description. So the Aang one, I obviously praised for what it was, and I think it's pretty much the same here. It's the same creative team that we had on the previous book, and that is illustrated by Bao Lu. Really, really like the art, and adapted by Mei Nakamura. So that's where the text kind of comes from. It's the adaptation kind of recap text. Now, in the review for I Am Aang, I mainly talked about the art because I really felt that the recap, the kind of text was fine. In this case, there's actually a little bit to talk about. I think probably two of the pages I think have something to talk about. One of which we might have to address in terms of like, is this an error or what? But we know what we're doing here. The art is very cool, as you can see for the cover here. Book 3 Zuko, doing some nice firebending. The back of the book is kind of the same across all of them. Nothing fancy going on there. And then, yeah, like I said, it's, basically 20 pieces of new art as you kind of go through it here. You can see it is kind of like double page spreads. Each of the kind of double pages really only has a small piece of text. It's pretty much like that on nearly all of the pages, but sometimes they do give like a full double page spread here. We did get preview pages for this, so if you want to see stuff a little bit kind of clearer, here is obviously the kind of opening kind of page of the book, highlighting kind of the way it's going to be told here. It's Zuko narrating the book. I am Zuko, so he's phrasing it all in that sense. Here's a bit from, I think, about halfway through the book. Just kind of highlighting Blue Spirit Zuko helping Aang, showing you that, they're depicting scenes from the show, of course. And the final group of pages here is this. So you get to see the Ozai's Angels here, Mei, Azula, Ty Lee, as well as some of the kind of the fight from the first episode of book 2. Cool stuff, definitely. I will show off a couple of the other kind of pages from inside the book. But I do want to address maybe the first kind of little bit with the kind of text that's kind of a little bit interesting. And that is just that the way Iroh kind of gets talked about it. I think it's fine. It very much kind of comes across as if a little bit of the context for Zuko's relationship with Iroh is kind of missing. And that they knew each other and they got on well prior to Zuko's banishment, whereas, here it says, my uncle Iroh joined me on my search. At first, he was way too relaxed for me, and I probably seemed uptight to him, but when danger arose, my uncle always had my back. I respected him for that, and I eventually grew to admire him. And it's kind of like, this one's more of a kind of nitpick, in that I think that's okay, but I think Zuko was already there with his uncle. This is maybe more of a kind of in-depth analysis of kind of their relationship and properly comparing where it was before, after, kind of like during the banishment. Obviously, their time together with Zuko's banishment is obviously where they became very, very close. But I do think a lot of it was there prior to that. So just the phrasing there is maybe a little bit along the lines where, like, I wish it was just a little bit different. The other one, it's about the page where they highlight the Mei and Zuko relationship. So we get this is like the second last page here. So you get a little bit of like Zuko learning lightning redirection, and then you do get the page of Mei and Zuko. So I'll just read it out here, and you could probably maybe tell if you know your stuff what the error is here. Something else I learned about was love. Azula's friend May and I had known each other as kids when my family vacationed at a beach house on Ember Island. My journey took me back to that island and back to May. So there's a little bit of an issue here with regards to one, is this suggesting May and Zuko first met on Ember Island? Which is not an established piece of information as far as I am aware, and I feel I know this stuff relatively well. I don't think I've ever come across that little bit of information. And then the idea that, like, it was... this is kind of framing it as if they only kind of got together kind of again as a couple during the beach episode. Whereas they had already been together since the comic in between book 2 and 3, Going Home Again, or if you're just going off the show, since basically the first episode of book 3. So either way, this is one of those ones where like obviously I guess it's an adaptation, but a little bit of the context is missing. But then there is also that idea of Azula's friend May and I had known each other as kids when my family vacationed at a beach house in Ember Island. The beach episode does not give you the context that, like, May and Ty Lee had been to Ember Island before. It lets you know that Zuko and his family had been to Ember Island before. They have the beach house there. But they don't give you the impression that, like, this is where they met for the first time. Because, even as it's kind of acknowledged in the text, it's Azula's friend May, kind of implying the idea that, oh, this is how Zuko and May kind of actually met each other. Because Azula, May, and Ty Lee met and became friends at the Royal Fire Academy for Girls, like school, basically. And the idea is that from there, her friends then met Zuko through Azula, and that's how Zuko actually knows May and Ty Lee. And that's kind of where they kind of tease about the idea of, like, oh, when we were younger, those two used to have a crush on each other, and you see what happens in Going Home Again. There's never a mention that, like, there was a specifically maybe more notable point within their relationship before where they interacted on Ember Island. So this is where you get into the idea of, well, what way do we treat this? And that, like, one, is it new information? Are they saying that actually they did meet previously on Ember Island? Or is it just a mistake in adaptation? Or is it just purposeful change for adaptation? Which I think with something that's trying to be accurate to the material is not really the intent. We have had mistakes in recap content before. It does happen. Obviously, you don't want to be super skeptical of every single thing that you read, but you see something like that and it's like, I definitely have questions and I don't immediately jump to interpret it kind of initially one way or the other. I probably would lean in the direction there of, I don't think these books are trying to reveal new information, like, basically at all. So I would just put that down to sort of an adaptation mistake. And this is where, like, we have to talk a little bit about Avatar Studios and the sort of process, because I would say Avatar Studios has not directly led to sort of maybe, like, less kind of mistakes happening in books. I think the approvals process for stuff like this feels like it's roughly the same as it's probably ever been. So little bits and pieces like this where it feels like, yeah, that probably could have used a little bit of another pass just to be a little bit more precise, because you didn't have to word it that way. I see the sort of intent of the page of, like, trying to add this whole idea together of, like, at the same time reference Ember Island but also be the page about Zuko and May, and that it would be maybe slightly complicated in one line of text basically to explain more of the context behind May and Zuko's relationship as well as the context behind Ember Island. But why would you do it this way? So that's a bit of a weird one, definitely. I'm not sure how I kind of feel about that. I like the page, I like the art, I like the reference in terms of, like, you know, it's been a while since we've addressed the kind of main Zuko relationship, and I think most people do think that this is Zuko's canon relationship going forward, that like Izumi is May's daughter, and that's the idea that we're getting towards. I don't think they're going to do anything too crazy with that. So it's nice to see that way. It's just a relatively simple adaptation. Why is it worded like that? In terms of other little bits of art that I might want to show off here, yeah, this one here. This is pretty nice. I like these two pages, just the kind of the double family portrait. The idea that it's actually like Azula with Ursa and Zuko with Ozai. I do kind of like that, just that they are all included here. And I will say, when it comes to that, the maybe sort of darker, the more intense parts of Zuko's story, even though it is a book for kids, it doesn't shy away from like explaining that sort of stuff. Like, it does say, like, my father gave me the scar I have over my left eye and banished me from the Fire Nation. So it says that like just for speaking out of turn, basically, my father dueled me, burned me, and banished me. So they don't hide from that. They mention that, like, say, him and Azula fight, and part of it is over the idea of, you know, fighting to be the kind of one with the birthright and stuff like that. So that's all kind of interesting. I would say they maybe underplay, like, the drama surrounding, say, like, Crossroads of Destiny, the betrayal there. That's a little bit underplayed, in that, like, it's the way it's worded. It's like what there were, yeah, you know, I was torn between my allegiance to my father and wanting to do the right thing. Sometimes I fought for the Avatar, and sometimes I fought against him. And it's just a little bit broad, not super specific, but I get they don't want it to be too much of a super dramatic, super intense one. I don't think that's like an inaccuracy. It's just the way they chose to do it, obviously. Always like the Ran and Shaw stuff here. Very nice. We got one of these in the other book with Aang. Let me just try and find that here just to do the comparison, because it's the same artist for the I Am Aang book and the I Am Zuko book. So, okay, so found it. So I Am Aang, there is the Ran and Shaw page here, Firebending Masters, very nice. And then here is the Zuko version. So they focus in more on one dragon than the other here, whereas this one is probably more of your classic dancing dragon kind of depiction. But still nice to kind of have them. I suppose the final thing in the video to say is just that we do have the next one of these announced. I Am Katara is coming in June, I think it is. So, you know, roughly 6-ish months on from I Am Zuko. This one should be interesting, just because, obviously, you know, it's really cool that they're giving Katara the focus here. And then, you know, Aang and Zuko as like the kind of two absolute kind of main leads, but Katara deserves definitely to be in that kind of category as well, as like the character who kind of starts the show kind of going by, like, in a way, finding Aang. So I'm very interested to see how they kind of do that and what scenes they choose for her and stuff like that going forward. Like, say, like bloodbending, Hama stuff, that'll be interesting. Some of the stuff they didn't overly focus on in these two books, you know, it'll be interesting to see her get some spotlight there. I'm assuming they'll probably announce maybe an I Am Toph. Maybe that'll be where they wrap it up, just because they maybe don't want to get too repetitive, but we'll see what they do. It'd be nice if they just kept it going. But yeah, I think that's everything I want to say. Just that, like, they're small, cheap little books. This is like, what, $5.99. So if you are a collector, I think this is good. Just for the new art, I think it's a cool thing to have. And the fact that they are, you know, they kind of do both work well together with the kind of gold spines. The consistency with the art, I think, is very cool. So if you like Bao Lu's art, it's one of those things where, like, here's a cheap little collection of books that I assume will only end up going maybe 4 or 5 books. We'll see what else happens there. Will they do Korra stuff like this? We have to wait and see. But this is, I think, the right style of kind of young reader Avatar books to do, where you emphasize new art and like recap kind of content as like another way to experience the story. I think this is done pretty well. So, yeah, other than that, that has been the video. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are on I Am Zuko, I Am Aang as well, and I guess your hope for this style of book going forward. What are your thoughts on it? But that has been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.